Jesus tells, right before he ascends into heaven, Jesus tells the apostles that their mission now is to take his word to Jerusalem, to Judea and Samaria, and to the ends of the earth. That was the plan that God gave them. Here we are, some say even up to 2 years later, and the apostles are still in Jerusalem. They're still kind of working Jerusalem. Last week, we saw the institution of the deacon because there were problems with the distribution of the food, and so they established these deacons to work the daily issues of the church. Ironically, though, we then see Stephen, one of those deacons, out preaching in the streets and out, he's definitely caught the spirit and he's definitely on fire to share the word of God. And he's out there in the streets and he is, of course, martyred, which begins a persecution, so Acts tells us. And so many of the Christians then were pushed out of Jerusalem because of the persecution. And isn't that just kind of a God incident, right? That he had given them these instructions to teach in Jerusalem, to go forth to Judea, Samaria, and to the ends of the earth. And now it takes a persecution to finally get them to leave Jerusalem. Philip goes out. Philip's one of those deacons, not the Philip of the apostles, but Philip, one of the deacons. And he goes to Samaria. Of course, Samaria being that area that was the half-breed Jewish people. It intermingled with the Gentiles in the midst of their exiles and returns and so forth. And so they were seen as lesser people. But Philip goes there and says, hey, the word of God is for you too, right? Because while a persecution might have turned their world upside down and forced them to go out finally, Philip realized Jesus turned their world upside down. And then everything was different now. We looked at the world differently. And the Samaritans were not just, these half-breeds anymore, but they were children of God. And it was for them that Christ came as well. And so Philip goes out, and the apostles hear that Samaria is coming on board. And of course, they go down to confirm the individuals there in the Spirit. I say all that to say this, that back in the 60s, the documents of Vatican II, that Vatican II was called because the church realized that the world was changing and that we needed to keep up and we needed to bring the message of Christ to the world in these new ways so that people in every corner of the world would know that Christ came for them too, that nobody was left out. And so in the 60s, it talked about how we're going to communicate in this new world of communication. In the 70s, there was a follow-on document that talked about how some people would actually experience reality through media. Is that not a foreshadowing of the internet? I don't know. But the gauntlet was thrown down to say we need to be getting out there and doing these things. And to a point, as the internet came on, there's been a lot of good things, a lot of good ministries online. But to the degree that we've seen in the last month, to the degree that we've seen of people even just sharing links on their social media to religious sites and studies and people participating in Bible studies who may never participated in them before, joining Google Meets and Zooms and everything else. It's phenomenal. But it took coronavirus to get this to happen, right? So God, but the people on the internet, God came for them. Jesus came for them as well. And that message is for them as well. We are to be using this tool as a tool to proclaim the word of God in season and out of season. And so, again, God turned the world on its head to kind of force the church out into these other fields to tell the world that Jesus turned the world on its head long before and taught us to look at the world completely differently through his eyes of redemption and conversion and salvation. That this word is for them as well. And so as we see our churches starting to reopen, we see our world starting to reopen, let us not neglect any corner or any opportunity to spread the word of God. us do all for the greater honor